are in Edinburgh, Texas today at the Edinburgh Conference Centre at Renaissance. The Hispanic Chamber, the RGV Hispanic Chamber, put on what they call the State of the RGV. In the Q&A section, you sort of brought the room to life with your commentary about the water situation. What was the key point you wanted to get across to these county judges?
So the key point I wanted to get across to them was that water is a huge issue, and it has been for the last 18 months. Judge Cortez pointed out a very important fact. You have more than half of the residents in all of the Rio Grande Valley and unincorporated cities. They are going to be the biggest part of our communities that will be impacted without water. They will have to drive to the large cities, Edinburgh, Brownsville, McAllen, to get their water for everyday needs. And that doesn't even include the impact to agriculture. You have more than 500,000 irrigated acres, 9,000 direct jobs, 3 to 4 times that in the allied industries or adjacent, trucking, boxing, etc. All of those jobs and communities are at risk if we don't do something today about this water shortage.
How far away are we from that situation where the residents living in the unincorporated areas have to go to the cities for their water? Months, couple of years, how far away are we?
We are incredibly close. We are probably months away. We got excuse my language, but a stay of execution when TCEQ and IBWC was able to negotiate with Tamaulipas 100,000 acre feet of water from the Rio San Juan intake. So that was huge, and that gave us a few more months. But at some point, this water is going to run out, and we are going to start seeing some very devastating impacts to the valley.
From the answers from the county judges, did you hear anything encouraging? Were there any answers, any projects they're working on to alleviate this situation?
So what I heard from them is they're aware of the issue. They're talking about it and they're discussing it, and that's huge. That's very, very important. What concerns me, though, is that with water, like any major construction project, it takes years before you see those benefits. So I understand that we need those resources and we need money, but right now is the time to act. Texas legislature is in session. We've got to go get those funds, because even if we get the money today, it's 2 years before we start to feel the benefits of these projects. And like I said, we're going to run out of water in a few months. We've already lost the industry for sugar. That's 40,000 production acres gone. 800 direct jobs. You have another 300 farmers that are no longer growing that product. So you're talking about some very real impacts we're already feeling, and those impacts are going to continue to grow if we don't act today.
There was a follow-up question from a member of the audience. I think actually she was a member of the press, she pointed out that Mexico doesn't have the water to give us anyway. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. So, you look at Mexico, and something like 26 of the 32 states in Mexico are in extreme drought shortage. The Rio Grande River depends on Chihuahua, Mexico, inserting a certain amount of water every year into the Rio Grande. They haven't done that over 30 years. They themselves are now dry. So there's no water coming in from anywhere. We as Texas need to not only enforce that treaty and work with the federal government. I think it was Judge Vela was saying it, absolutely right, we need to do that, but we also need to be responsible for our own destiny. We need to invest right now in South Texas. We need to invest in the future of water here. Otherwise, the 1.3 million citizens we have, which by the way are due to double by 2045, we are putting this entire region at risk if we don't address this issue today.
You mentioned that the legislature's in session. They started,
Yes.
They started yesterday. We have a new Congress in Washington. What is TIPA doing legislatively, both in DC and Austin? What's your agenda right now?
Yeah, so very fortunately, we have some great champions in D.C. Monica de la Cruz has really kind of led the charge. You've got Vicente Gonzalez has been bringing in a lot of money to his region as well, and he's working alongside also Henry Cuellar, John Cornyn, Ted Cruz, and they are very big and vocal advocates for our needs down here. But again, they're one in a population of 500 and almost 50 elected officials up there. So we are working with them and have been for years. Here in the legislature, we are looking for champions to advance regional plans. We're not looking for water just for McAllen. We're not looking for water just for Hidalgo. We want water infrastructure investment that benefits the entire Rio Grande Valley, not just agriculture, but all of our communities for all purposes. It's our future.
And specifically in Austin, there's a champion in the Senate. I think his name's Charles Perry out
That's
of
correct.
Lubbock. And he's proposing legislation. I think the voters have already said yes to this, a permanent fund
Yes.
for water. Before, transportation, there's always money there, but there isn't for water projects. How important is that, and can the Rio Grande Valley benefit from that?
Absolutely. So his bill is a little limited. He's only going to be giving money out of that new fund to new water creation. So you're talking about projects that are not already in there. You're not talking about conservation. You're talking about brand new projects that build up new water generation. So one of the judges mentioned it, deep water drilling, right? Going under the water tables that are at 150, 300 feet, going down to 800 feet to get that water, brackish water treatment, reverse osmosis, large-scale desalination seawater plants. So his project is for big ideas, and that's great. But those ideas take decades to realize. We need investment today that sees returns within short periods of time. We as a region need to keep our attention on this issue. We have got to keep our foot on the pedal. We cannot allow this situation to get worse. Too many times, because we think the issue's too big, we just don't look at it. That was our issue with transportation, right? We had over-congested freeways, smaller service roads that were just unattainable. You couldn't really use them. And it wasn't until the region got together, and they talked about that today, that we saw a massive investment. We went from, what was it? I think the figure was $200 million to roughly almost $4 billion worth of investment. That's because we came together as a region. We have to do that with water, and we have to start today, because it is going to be years before we feel it. And the longer we go, the worse this issue gets, and the higher that price tag grows.
Dante, thank you so much for today's interview. We've learned a lot.
Pleasure as always. Thank you, guys.